As the Emergency Arab Summit in Cairo takes place today, the Palestinian cause is at critical juncture. With Gaza facing destruction and its future uncertain, the Arab leaders will meet to discuss key steps forward, including a ceasefire, reconstruction, and a political solution. How will the summit bring the Arab world closer to a unified stance on the Palestinian cause? Can international support be garnered for lasting peace? And what role will Egypt play in securing Palestinian future? Welcome to In Depth. Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs Badr Abdelati has recently stated that the Egyptian Arab Plan for Gaza reconstruction, which ensures that Palestinians remain on their land, is ready to be presented at the extraordinary Arab Summit today. As reported by Al-Ahram Online, Abdelati made these remarks during a joint press conference in Cairo with the European Commissioner for the Mediterranean, following talks covering several bilateral and regional domains. He also stressed the need for immediate recovery programs in the heavily devastated Strip and a political process that leads to establishing a Palestinian state to ensure cycles of violence do not recur. The news outlet added that Arab leaders reaffirmed that establishing a Palestinian state remains the only fair resolution to the Palestinian cause. As Egypt prepares to host the Emergency Arab Summit today, the focus remains on three critical issues concerning Palestine: a ceasefire agreement, Gaza's reconstruction, and the political future of the Palestinian cause.
The Arab Summit in Cairo aims to address growing concerns over the Palestinian territories, particularly Gaza, which is grappling with a severe humanitarian and political crisis. Leaders from across the Arab world focus on the continuation of ceasefire agreements and the withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces from Gaza. Egypt's pivotal role in brokering a comprehensive ceasefire is a central theme, as the Arab world aims to prevent further Israeli violations of international humanitarian law. Additionally, the summit prioritizes a reconstruction plan for Gaza. Last month, leaders from several Arab countries met in the Saudi capital and agreed on a $53 billion reconstruction initiative designed by Egypt to be implemented over 3 to 5 years. The plan begins with establishing safe zones, featuring tents and mobile homes to provide temporary housing for displaced residents during the reconstruction process. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati announced that he is prepared to present the plan to Arab leaders for approval at today's emergency summit. The political dimension of the summit includes discussions on a long-term resolution to the Palestinian cause. Arab leaders remain committed to pursuing the establishment of a Palestinian state. Under Egypt's leadership, the summit aims to present a unified Arab stance on achieving peace in the Palestinian territories, advancing Gaza's reconstruction, and finding a lasting solution to the Palestinian cause.
And for more analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, and Dr. Nurhan El-Sheikh, Political Science Professor. Welcome to the program, and I would start with Dr. Osman. Now, given the urgency of the situation, Doctor, how critical do you believe the timing of this emergency Arab summit is, especially with the developments on the ground in Gaza and the broader Palestinian territories?
Thank you for having me, Hala. Greetings to you and your honorable guest and to the esteemed audience. Of course, the time could not be more critical by any means, because this summit comes at a time where the Palestinian cause is facing an existential threat. And when I say existential, I mean it by the I mean it word for word, because now there are propositions in order to completely and entirely uproot the Palestinian people in total or in part from what remains of historical Palestine. And that's why we have seen the prompt action taken by Egypt and other Arab nations to organize and call for this emergency summit in order to discuss how to tackle this, in order to propose alternative solutions, and in order to safeguard the Palestinian cause within the premises of its key pillars. And one of its key pillars, of course, is securing a two-state solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict based on the 1967 borders, not the displacement of the Palestinians, basically. So Egypt hopes that its reconstruction plan can be adopted in this Arab summit, because by gaining Arab support and endorsement, this will increase its international weight and its ability to convince and deliver. This Arab summit comes as a direct answer to President Trump's calls to displace the Palestinians, which of course the Israelis have enthusiastically welcomed. So it came in response to that to offer an alternative based on international law, on basic morality, actually. And also, it comes at a time where the ceasefire agreement is growing ever more fragile, when the ceasefire agreement is poised to collapse at any moment due to Israel's complete non-compliance with its terms. The first phase is over. The Israelis and the Americans are trying to extend it. The Palestinians understandably refused that and said that we have to stick to the terms and move to the second phase in order to end this war. However, the Israelis are not complying, and now they are actively preparing to resume hostilities in the Gaza Strip. So we are confronting very difficult days ahead.
Yes. Dr. Nurhan, now, given the proposed extension of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire and the ongoing Israeli aggression in the West Bank, as Dr. Osman mentioned, how do you see this summit influencing the trajectory of Palestine's future?
I think the summit is very important and coming in very critical moment, because you know that Netanyahu not only blocking the negotiation for the second phase, but he also refused and ordered to block the humanitarian assistance to Gaza. That make life nearly impossible for Palestinian people, and violating the humanitarian international law dramatically. So the summit is very important to give a clear message about the Arab stance, about what should be done, about what the procedures will be followed from the Arab countries in the upcoming future, because this is the only way solution for Palestinian is to have a Palestinian state, reconstruction in Gaza, stop the escalation of violence in West Bank. This is all very important, and it should be clearly noted to the Israeli leaders. I think we have some support from inside, from Israel. I think we all watching the demonstrations against Netanyahu and against stop negotiation for the second phase. But still, we should also make it clear that this is the only way to be followed, and that all Arab countries now united supporting this all those three aims and goals you mentioned at the early of the program.
Well, whether the internal pressure would actually make any difference for the Israeli government is a different point that I would like to discuss with you, Dr. Norhan. But I will go now back to Dr. Osman and ask you, with the current growingly fragile ceasefire being one of the key issues on the summit's agenda, how do you expect Arab leaders to approach the issue of ensuring the Israeli occupation forces withdrawal from Gaza? And what are the chances of achieving concrete steps in this direction?
Well, Hala, any outcome of this summit cannot be implemented without the survival of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. If the ceasefire collapses and if the hostilities resume, then of course there will be no talk of any Arab plans to resolve the crisis permanently in Gaza in the foreseeable future. And maybe that's what Netanyahu is aiming for by not complying with the terms of the ceasefire and trying to undercut the upcoming summit by stalling the implementation of the ceasefire agreement through basically refusing to engage in negotiations for the second phase of the ceasefire agreement. And also by placing or pushing forward very unrealistic preconditions to base these negotiations upon. And unfortunately, the American mediator, instead of trying to do his job and actually mediate, they are supporting the Israeli narrative by proposing dubious solutions like the prolonging or the extension of the first phase of the ceasefire. The Palestinian resistance has flatly rejected that. Even the Arab powers in the region, Egypt and even Saudi Arabia and other countries, they have that there needs to be full compliance with the agreement as is, not any other alternatives like the prolonging of the first ceasefire, the first phase, because what the Israelis aim through trying to extend the first phase is to secure the release of more detainees before they can actually decide to resume this war. I think that we are beyond the point where we can assume that Israel has any good intentions in this calculus. I think they are very underhanded, and they seek to actually implement by force the displacement schemes. And the only way they can do this, after Egypt and the Arab world flatly rejected Trump's propositions, is through furthering and deepening the humanitarian crisis. And they have started already. They have cut all the aid from flowing into Gaza in complete violation of the agreement and in complete violation of international law, even, because it's a crime against humanity. And now they are giving ultimatums. If half of the hostages are not released in 10 days, we will resume hostilities. Of course, this brazen behavior by the Israelis can only be confronted by a firm Arab stance. And I think what the Arab Summit needs to do, in addition to potentially supporting and endorsing the Egyptian reconstruction plan, is also emphasizing that the only way forward is abiding by the ceasefire agreement as the first phase has been implemented, no matter how flawedly it has been implemented, yet it has been successfully implemented. So we need to proceed to phase 2 and phase 3 in order to end this war. And I think that the Arabs have many tools that they can use and utilize collectively, and they need to come out today with a very strong resolution that actually outlines their position and their way forward in confronting any further Israeli violations in this regard.
Yes. Dr. Norhan, back to you. Given the urgent need for ceasefire in Gaza to hold, as Dr. Osman mentioned, this is a very crucial point. And with Israel's history of violations, do you believe that Israel will accept the outcomes of this summit, particularly in terms of maintaining a lasting ceasefire and honoring its obligations under international law?
I think the outcomes of summit should be translated to some resolutions, some decision of UN. So I expect that all the outcomes of our summit, Arab Summit, should be introduced to the United Nations It is very important to say to the whole international community that we have alternative from Trump plan. We are insisting to stuck with our land, the Arab land, the Palestinians land. So the international community should also handle its own responsibility. So I think all outcomes should be directly moved to the UN to be adopted in the General Assembly, because we all know that in the Security Council it will be blocked by the United States, at least, if not with also supporting Britain or France, whatever, but at least the United States will use veto, so nothing will pass in Security Council. Mm-hmm. But we have the General Assembly, and we have other historical example and cases, so we can do it in the General Assembly. I think with that global majority within the General Assembly, and with the support of international community, Israel should respond for that positively, at least to continue negotiation. This is one of the paths. I think also we should try to go into other paths. Within the United States itself, there are many voices, many politicians who also support two-state solution and support negotiation. We should also trying to contact with them and to reach them, parallel with as I mentioned, the opposition, Israeli opposition itself, which also supporting negotiation and supporting going forward to the second phase. And we all, I think, need any support to be, because it's a very critical moment. And as you mentioned, Netanyahu, the most probably will not listen to the summit decisions, and will continue his violation to humanitarian law, to all international laws, and even all traditions, all ethics, everything.
Mm-hmm. So from what I understand from you, Dr. Norhan, you see that mobilization would actually put pressure on the Israeli government, hopefully, to accept the conclusions of this summit. I will go back now to Dr. Osman. Now, Doctor, the Emergency Arab Summit is intended to provide alternative solutions to Israeli-backed U.S. displacement schemes. What are the chances that the Trump administration will be willing to positively respond to the outcome of the Cairo summit?
I think there are legitimate chances, but they are slim. I tend to be a bit of a pessimist in this regards, as you have known me, Hala, and I think
realistic, I would say.
Unfortunately, yes, unfortunately, yeah. And I hope I'm proven wrong. However, they are slim. However, there's a chance that President Trump might be willing to listen to reason if he finds that the Arabs can come up with a cohesive, implementable plan that can be reliably implemented with an actual executive plan of implementation. If this can be produced and projected through today's Arab summit, I think we do have some chances. And I think what Dr. Norhan said about the idea of mobilizing international support through the UN General Assembly is a wonderful idea, because this will give it even more legitimacy, basically an international endorsement. And even the other day, the EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean was in Cairo and met with Egyptian officials and President al-Sisi, and through her, the EU has expressed interest in actually assisting in the implementation of the Egyptian reconstruction plan when endorsed by the Arab Summit. So it is very interesting how international support can play a pivotal role in this. However, of course, what's instrumental is U.S. agreement to the implementation of this plan, because without the U.S. there will be no pressure on Israel, and without Israeli non-compliance, none of this can be implemented. So the problem is always lies with the United States and their ability and their willingness, not their ability. They are able to pressure the Israel very well, as demonstrated by the Trump administration when they forced Netanyahu to accept the ceasefire against his will and against the will of much of his governing coalition. However, they don't seem to be willing at this moment to pressure the Israelis to abide by anything. If anything, Trump's and Witkoff's statements and remarks are always very alarming in how biased and unhinged they are when it comes to supporting Israel. So I think that, but if there is a reliable plan that can convince Trump that the alternative, that this is an implementable plan and that the alternative will cause further chaos to the region and will actually endanger U.S. interests in the region and might even drag the United States to longer commitments, to longer wars in the Middle East, maybe then the Trump administration might be enticed, because they are not interested in any long-term commitment to any war in the world, especially in the Middle East, whether a war by proxy or a direct war with any other party. However, the chances of this happening, I do still believe, are very slim, because U.S. intransigence, Israeli intransigence, and U.S. unconditional support and enablement of Israeli impunity is unfortunately an obstacle along this way. However, there is a chance still, even though if it's slim, that the Americans might accept the Egyptian Arab reconstruction plan and might try to move forward from there.
Hopefully, hopefully. That was Dr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, and Dr. Nurhan al-Sheikh, Political Science Professor. Thank you very much, both of you, for your valuable insights. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates here on Qnews.